What's going on, guys? What's going on, girls? Sal here, back again. This time I'm going to do something a little bit different on this channel. So this is more of what I'm going to be doing during the NFL offseason to tie into the NFL since there's no games that'll be on to kind of build lineups around. But it's going to be more strategy based, and this one's just going to be a way to be more contrarian. I'm going to just name these little episodes How to Win at Draftkings, maybe a little bit clickbaity, but really just trying to get people to see these videos because I think it is going to be meaningful. And also, this video is going to tie into a giveaway. It's actually free to everybody. If you just go in the description below, it's a little 10 page like mini ebook that I created, and it's just 10 tips on being more contrarian in daily fantasy sports. It's a way to be optimal, not being contrarian and just playing bad players. That's not what it's about. And that's what this video is going to get into. But right now you can go in the description below and you can click that link. It'll say free audiobook, free giveaway, whatever it is, and you can get that. So I just want to keep giving you guys more content. One, it allows me to get better as a writer, so maybe I could work for a company or something. And just hone my skills, and it also provides you guys value. And in writing that, it also reminds me some of the things as well. So it's just a win-win for everybody. So check that out right now. But what we're going to be doing here and what this episode is going to be, and these might be a little bit quicker videos and based on what the other ones are for breaking down a whole slate or building a lineup. This might be like a 10-minute video, we'll see. But basically what I wanted to do here is just discuss ways to be more contrarian, and I'll give you a first way. And that's what these episodes will be. It'll be for the contrarian type of episodes. Every single week I'm going to try and give you another strategy. And then we're going to try and get some other slate breakdowns, things like that we could do in the NFL offseason for the NBA, but also continue to bring you value for the NFL, because I know that you guys watching this right now enjoy playing DFS NFL, but I'm sure there's some of you that also like NBA and things like that. So where I'm at right now, this is Fantasy Labs, and I'm on their contest dashboard. So it's totally free. It's actually a great tool if you want to pay for the paid version, or if not, and again, this is the free version. So I do have a paid version, but this is the free version right now. And there's a couple things you could do. So right now, whenever you're watching this in the future, if you're watching from the future, I hope that you have won a tournament by now. If I haven't, I hope you have. Knocked down the Millie Maker, whatever it might be. But this is for the week 15, so it looks back from the week before. Once the lineups lock, you get to use this dashboard right here, which lets you see what the stacks were, so stack percentages were, and I think we've done this on a couple episodes. So for week 15 of the NFL season, the two highest home players in the, let's go to the Millie Maker. The two highest home players in the Millie Maker were, I'm assuming Joe Mixon and Ezekiel Elliott. There's not much difference. Yeah, so Joe Mixon and Ezekiel Elliott. Joe Mixon, as you can see, almost 42% owned. Ezekiel Elliott a little over 30%. Combined, they're only 10% owned. So only 10% of the lineups. That's a good chunk for the Millie Maker. Had these two guys in there. But one thing I just want to show you quickly is if you actually select, so you have the two highest owned running backs. Now let's select the highest owned wide receiver in Juju Smith-Schuster. If you select Juju Smith-Schuster there, it drops to 1.46% owned. So a big misconception is that to be contrarian, you have to be playing bad players. And that's just not true. I mean, we see here you have 3 of the top 5 most owned players on the slate, and they're 3 good players, right? Especially this week, because Joe Mixon was so cheap at 6,100, and he was getting like 25 plus touches, or projected to. And then you have Ezekiel Elliott, who has an insane role in this 2018 season. Those are 2 high-owned guys. Then you have the highest-owned guy in Juju Smith-Schuster, who had a great matchup, but he was just absolutely balling out, and only 1% of the lineups have it. Now, see what happens when you add Dalvin Cook. 0.09%. I want to emphasize that. 0.09% people in this week's 15 Millie Maker had Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So that's 3 running backs, so one of them is going to be in your flex, and then Juju. So the 3 highest owned running backs and the highest owned wide receiver were only in 153 out of 176,000 lineups. Now that's crazy. That's 4 of the 5 most owned players in the slate, and you can keep going. You can keep doing different things with this, but I just wanted to make it evident here, and this is one of the biggest things that I like to talk about and kind of say. And Manny Laura, he does Twitch streams, he also discusses this too, and it's simple, right? Play the good players. And that sounds super simple, but when you try and be more contrarian, or it gets trendy to be contrarian because the field is so sharp now, and especially like by sharp I mean like people like you are watching this video right now because you want to put more into your DFS, your daily fantasy sports. You want to make sure that you're getting the best knowledge out there, the best information to win, right? So that's just getting more sharp. The entire field is doing that. There's way more media than there ever was. I'm literally doing this. I didn't think I'd be doing this like a year ago. So When people are trying to get more sharp, they tend to try and be more contrarian, or the people who aren't sharp want to be sharp, so they try and be contrarian by playing just somebody who's in a terrible situation because he'll be low owned, or a guy who's $3,000 because nobody's going to be playing him, and it lets you get up to a different lineup construction. And in some situations, that's an optimal way to be contrarian. But sometimes, and a lot of times, that what people do is they just put these bad players in their lineup and hope that they get a throw in the dark touchdown, or just something that really isn't optimal, right? There's ways to be contrarian without playing absolutely terrible plays. You can see that literally right here. Yes, you have 4 high-owned players, so each time one of them goes off, a lot of people are going to have that person. And if all of them go off, I mean, then you're in the pool, right? But in general, if 4 people in your lineup go off, you're in a good spot no matter what. But you're still getting 4 really good players, even though they're highly owned, and you're still somewhat contrarian, just naturally, because nobody's really going to have the same builds as you. It's really tough to, and you can see that here. Let's see how many people had all 5. And now Gronk is a little bit more expensive. 6 people had the 5 highest owned players in the slate, right? And it's hard to get there because they're all decently expensive. But without Gronk, this isn't that expensive of a lineup because 2 running backs are in the mid-range. You can make that work. You would just have to go down in other places. Again, this is just to show you guys that you don't have to be playing or avoiding, oh, I can't play 3 highly owned players, my lineup's too chalky. No, the optimal build is to go chalky stud plays, Ezekiel Elliott, in this case for this week, Joe Mixon, Juju if you thought he was in a good spot. And again, by playing these high owned players, it doesn't mean that you're going to be in a good spot, because Juju only had 4 catches for 40 yards this week. He completely busted at $8,000. He only got 8 points, right? He 1x'd his value. Like, that's not going to get you there, but it does give you a good player who has the upside to get you there. I'm not condoning playing the top 10 most owned guys. You can't most of the time because the salary just, it doesn't add up. They're all highly owned guys for the most part, unless it's a value play week. But even then, it's going to be tough. I'm just saying, you don't have to say, oh, I can only play Ezekiel Elliott and Joe Mixon if I play another stud like a Juju at wide receiver, or if I play like a Julian Edelman for this week, or a Julio Jones in other weeks. My lineup's going to be too chalky. Too many people are going to have it. That's just not true. So play the good players. Don't worry about your lineup being too chalky in tournaments. Obviously, this is tournaments-wise. You're not talking cash games here. It's not very optimal to be considering ownership for the most part in your cash games decisions. It shouldn't be taken into really any consideration, in my opinion. It's good to think about. Maybe in higher owned stakes and cash, it's decent to think about if you want to try and give yourself an edge, but you might just psych yourself out of some winnings there. So again, this is Fantasy Labs. It's a great tool. You can see a bunch of different things. We're going to look at one more thing before I kind of end this little shorter end video. Oh, we got a little pop-up for Merry Christmas. Yeah, it's Christmas, and I might be shooting this earlier. I'm going to be going on a road trip with my girlfriend to start the new year for like a week. I want to make sure I'm getting content out there, so this won't be like I shot this the day of, but it'll definitely be relevant for the playoffs, when the playoffs are coming in, because there are smaller game slates in the playoffs, and what that's going to affect the smaller game slate is this next thing that we're going to look at. So we're going to close the door on this for now. You can get more about this if you go down in the description and you download that audiobook. I definitely talk about this as one of my tips. The next thing we're going to look at, and this is for week 15 of the season, right? And this is kind of a sample because it's only week 15, but it is a strong sample. I can assure you, if we go back and we look at other weeks, if we go back and we look at other context dates on here, this is all looking at DraftKings, but you can filter to look at FanDuel, to look at fantasy draft, things like that. But I'm just going to assume, based on, I've been looking at this almost every single week, and it's pretty much in the same range outside of like a 2 to 3% difference. So we could say that it's pretty much the same range we're going to see. The first thing that we're seeing here is salary distribution. So this is basically how much money every lineup used in the Millie Maker for week 15. So how much money they used, how much money then, therefore, was left on the table, right? So you can see, using all their money was 47.7, almost 48%, almost 50% of all the entries used 50% of their money. I'm going to tell you why that's, I mean, it's going to be optimal in certain situations, but I'm also going to tell you why in a second, why it couldn't be optimal as well, especially if you're trying to be contrarian and set yourself apart in a way that doesn't take on more risk, right? So I think that's a big thing that I just said. Being contrarian is about taking on risk, right? It's about putting yourself in uncertain situations, uncomfortable situations that other people won't put them in. But that doesn't mean you have to take on all the risk. That doesn't mean you have to play $2,000, $3,000 guys who have no upside at all, right? Or playing a dying veteran or a guy in the mid-range that nobody's talking about, but nobody's talking about him because he's in an awful situation, right? There's ways to take on risk, giving yourself certain stacks, different game type stacks, going naked at QB, things like that that can be optimal for you and set you apart. There's also ways to find lower owned players that nobody's talking about that are studs. I mean, last week we had like a Julio Jones at 5% owned in a tournament just because he was going up against a tough matchup. In my opinion, that should never happen. Like, you should capitalize on that. I didn't enough, but he had a great week. So things like that are ways to take on risk that or put yourself in uncomfortable situations that others won't. But this is a way to take on no risk at all, really, as far as I know, and we'll go through that, and still be contrarian. So almost 50% of the field is spending all their money. Another 22% is only leaving $100 on the table, common. I usually tend to build lineups like this. And then another 12% is only leaving $200 on the table. So let's round this up to 50. Let's say 22, so that's 72% plus another 12, 84%. So 84% of the lineups out there, and we can just say for the whole season around 80%, depending on which way it goes. We'll be lenient and say only 80%. So let's just say 80% of the lineups for the 2018 season are only leaving $200 or less on the table. So if you just leave $300 on the table, which is literally the difference between two cheap defenses, and defenses are so variant. So I mean, some situations you have a better matchup. Yes, if one's playing a high-powered offense and they don't cause turnovers or get any pressure, then obviously you don't want to use them. Again, the points on a defense don't really matter. It's the fact that they can get pressure and cause turnovers, pick sixes, sacks, things like that. But it's literally the difference between a cheap defense. And you can get to leaving $300 on the table. Well, only 7% about are doing that. Leaving $400 on the table, only about 4% are doing that. And leaving $500 on the table, only 2%. So you automatically make yourself more contrarian. You're in a 20% pool of people that are doing this just by leaving money on the table. You dare leave $500 on the table, which is a good chunk in the NFL, right? It allows you to get from the low range maybe to the mid range at wide receiver, from the mid range at running back to the higher end at running back, right? But if you're in a situation where you like your lineup, don't reach, right? Like we see a lot of times, there might be, let's just say for example, $4,900 wide receiver that you like. They're in a good matchup. They're getting increased snaps. Maybe somebody was injured, or just they're in a great matchup. They're a big play guy for tournaments. But you have an extra $500 left over, so you force yourself to go up to the 5,400, say Larry Fitzgerald, or I don't know, somebody in that range who might not have as much upside as say like a Robbie Anderson in like the $4,900 range, something like this. These types of players. And has a worse game situation, but you have the money, so you say, you know what, he must be the better play. Now, Draftkings salaries are pretty good. They're algorithms at creating whose salaries were based on how they think they're going to succeed at that price range. But it's not a bulletproof thing, right? We've seen it all year long. You find value, you find underpriced guys, and you exploit them. So that's just to say, don't try and pay up if you think your lineup's optimal, because leaving money on the table isn't a bad thing. I would argue it's actually a good thing, and it's a good thing because you're being more contrarian. You leave $500 on the table, you know only 2% of the people have an opportunity to even have your lineup, and we saw before in the Stack Seeker that if you just literally build any lineup you want, it's going to be tough for somebody to have that same lineup based on ownership. Just being so hard and it being so unique to get one guy in there or even a defense in there that somebody else isn't using at that point. So if you're setting yourself up, we go to DraftKings there, but if you're setting yourself up to only have 2% of people have possibly your lineup, and you're doing that constantly, and you're doing that on smaller slates, so that's the thing that I want to mention and should have mentioned earlier. This is obviously a great strategy no matter what, because you're being contrarian without taking on more risk, right? As long as you're picking optimal players. If you leave $300 on the table, you're not really taking on any extra risk, right? Again, it's the difference between a defense. You leave $500 on the table, you're really not taking on extra risk, because that could be the difference between a defense, or it could be the fact that you're staying put at a guy you feel comfortable about. But I think this strategy is even better on smaller slates, right? So smaller slates, it's a spot where it's tougher to get differentiated lineups. Let's say a 2-game slate, a Thursday to Monday slate, or these Saturday slates that we sometimes get. Maybe a 3-game slate like on Thanksgiving, whatever it might be, or a 3-game afternoon slate. These slates are smaller, and for the majority of the time, and let's see if we can find the afternoon if there's anything. I'm not sure there's any late afternoon slates on here right now to look at the ownerships for those. This was the showdown, so. Alright. Yeah, let's stick to the millie. I wanted to see if there's like a late afternoon so we could actually have the data for that, but I'll have to like look into the tool to see if we can find that. But what I'm saying is if you have a 2 or 3 game slate, ownership's going to be basically pretty high on every single player. But we know that if you leave money on the table, and this is going to be a little different game strategy for smaller slates, you might have to leave 600, 700, but it's not that much more. It's definitely not, you have to leave $1,000 on the table, but if you did, you definitely set yourself apart. But on smaller game slates, if you're leaving money on the table and building an optimal lineup, or one that could be optimal, again, it doesn't have to be what you think is the absolute greatest lineup if it's giving you a lineup that nobody else has. We know how valuable that is in Showdown Slate, getting a lineup that nobody else has, and it's still a good lineup, not maybe the most optimal, the best players overall, but again, not a lot of times do those hit, and when they do hit, you're going to split it with 1,000 people. Smaller game slates, leaving money on the table, I think is the best way without taking on additional risk to kind of set yourself apart, because there's only a handful of plays, right? There's only 4 quarterbacks you could possibly play. There's only 4 defenses. Most of the time, there's only 4 tight ends. And then you get to running back and wide receiver, there might be 8 that you can play total, or 8 to 12 that you can play total and feel good about. Building a lineup that leaves you $600 to $1,000 on the table in these slates definitely sets you apart, and really for the most part, unless it's a slate where there's just too many people, like the Jags-Titans slate we had this year, or too little people, I don't think that it's hard to kind of get down at one more position by putting a wide receiver in your flex who's a little bit cheaper than one of the other running backs if it's a good situation. Obviously, if it's a great running back, you're not going to do that. But again, just a way to be contrarian without taking on a ton of risk is to just check out how much money you're leaving on the table. So what we covered in this video, and these are going to be videos that I'll be doing more often, again, once the NFL season ends, once playoffs are over, Super Bowl, maybe even during the playoffs a little bit, we'll be doing these contrarian videos, or how to win at DraftKings, clickbaity title videos. And these ones are going to be focused around the contrarian mindset, but there'll also be tools videos in there that I use, things like that. Again, you could enter down below to get like kind of a huge PDF of all this stuff. I have graphs in there, things like that. I thought it was pretty cool. Building it was a ton of fun. I'm also going to start to put down below the link to join the Facebook group. It's going to be the Daily Fantasy Assist group, and it's just a spot really for us to be more interactive. Obviously, you can comment on each other's comments on here and talk to each other, but I want to build a community because there's really not a good one out there that's like sharp DFS players. If we could build that on Facebook, you kind of just drop questions that you guys have in there, you discuss it with each other, maybe drop any tools that you guys are using, anything like that, just to help each other out, right? You get smarter by really just conversating with others. I truly believe that knowledge spillover is a thing. When a bunch of people discussing the same topic that have education on it are together, you get everybody else's education, you get smarter overall in knowledge. So yeah, that's just the plan with that, to build a community. I'm going to link that up. I created the group, so I'll try and link that if it's a private group, so it's like an invite-only thing. But I think as long as I get the link in there, it'll be good for you guys. Yeah, so again, free audio book, whatever you want to call it, down below. Sign up there for it. And this is just How to Win at DraftKings video, Volume 1. I'm Sal. It's about to be Christmas. If you're watching this from the future, I hope you had a great Christmas. Again, I hope you won a tournament by now if I haven't. If you're watching this, well, I'm not going to be posting this till after Christmas, actually. So, yeah, have a great holiday, even though you're not going to see this, future you guys. But hit up the description below. Again, likes, comments, shares, whatever you guys want to do. Let's get this stuff out there, trying to hit that 1,000 mark if I'm not there by now. If I am, just keep liking and subscribing. My name's Sal. Best of luck, everybody. Peace.